Welcome to Universal God, Message of Peace. And I'm Lee Weissman, and that's Lale Tanjit. And we are talking today, and we're missing Dr. Zahir. He's going to be responding to this afterwards. So, Dr. Zahir, hi. And looking forward to his response. Today we're talking about atheism. And is atheism the problem or not? Um, so, so I want to start out with a joke. I try never to tell jokes because I'm not good at it, but I'm going to do it anyway. So there was once a Jewish atheist. Now, for those of you who are wondering how there can be a Jewish atheist, um, there's a there's a Jewish ethnic identity. So a person who is born Jewish is considered to be part of the Jewish people, whether or not they believe in the religion. Like, so it's a strange thing having a religion and an ethnicity kind of combined, but that's how it goes. So there was an atheist Jew, and he was living in a small town, and there were many schools in the area, but the best school in the area was a Catholic school. And so he thought about it carefully, and he decided to send his child to the Catholic school. So his son goes to the Catholic school, and and he attends his first day. And of course, in the Catholic school, every child has to take catechism, right? Has to take um, Catholic studies, religious studies class. So the boy goes, and he comes home to his father, and his father says to him, he says, "So, how was your day?" He says, "It was amazing. School was really great. I mean, I love the teachers. I love the kids. It was amazing." He says, "What was the best part of your day?" He said, "Best part of my day was catechism. The best part of my day was religious studies." He said, "Why?" He says, "Because they taught us all about God." And they said, "Well, what did they tell you about God?" He says, "Well, they told us that God has there are like three parts. There's Father, there's the Son, there's the Holy Spirit, and the Father grabs the kid and he throws him up against the wall. And he says, 'Kid, there's only one God, and we don't believe in him.'" That's the joke. Okay, so the, the moral of the story is sometimes people are not as atheists as they seem. But let's talk a little bit about about atheism. Um, uh, one of the deepest insights actually that I ever got about atheism was from an imam friend of mine. And I was talking to him about a situation with one of my students, and we would talk things over sometimes. And he said, says atheists have it half right. I said, "Well, what do you mean they have it half right?" He says, "Well, what's the Muslim declaration of faith? La ilaha illallah, right? Well, they're halfway there. La ilaha, right? There is no God." And so I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, first step to believing in God is to stop believing in things which are not God, right? Right? There is no God but God. So first you have to come to there is no God." So I had students very often, I taught teenagers, right? And so I taught 16-year-olds. And at 16 years old, everybody wants to be an atheist, right? So at 16-year-olds, it's cool to be an atheist in the West. They're like, so, and what better way to freak out your religious studies teacher, right? With the big beard, who looks so religious, like what better way to make his day horrible than to tell him that you are decided you're an atheist. So that they would come into me, they go, so God decided like I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. I said, okay. So I said, first, tell me about the God you don't believe in. Okay. I said, is he kind of a big guy with a big beard? Yeah. Does he live in heaven? Yeah. He says, and he has like a lightning bolt, right? And if you do something wrong, he's gonna throw the lightning bolt at you. I said, he said, yeah, yeah, like that. I said, oh. He says that God, his name is Zeus, and I don't believe him either. Right? So I think very often people who are atheists, right? Part of the problem is that that they're also not believing in a God that I don't believe in either, right? That we as children, we're raised sometimes with an idea of God that is so outlandish and childish that as we become adults, we kind of look at it and go, I can't believe in that. It doesn't make sense to me anymore. And with good reason, right? And with good reason. Because to imagine some guy in the sky whose whole existence is about punishing you if you do bad or giving you a reward if you do good. But if to imagine God in that way only, um, uh, you can easily see why somebody would not believe in such a God. And and so when people tell me that they're atheists, I'm often a little bit skeptical, right? I'm often a little bit skeptical of their atheism. Um, so that's I guess that's kind of my first point. Let me talk specifically about the kind of the Jewish case. So the idea that one has to believe in God. I'm going to use that word believe. I'm going to put that into quotes for a second. Okay, put that into quotes for a second. Is derived from one verse in the Torah. I mean, even though of course, it's presumed in the entire Torah that there is a God and that God is active in human affairs, that God created the universe, that God is eternal, that God is all powerful. All those things are assumed throughout the entire Torah. But the very first verse of the Ten Commandments says to us, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem your God. I am Hashem your God. And from that, we derive um, the obligation the obligation to believe that there's God. Now, the reason why I keep putting this into quotations is because of um, a very interesting historical accident. So, um, Maimonides, who was probably the greatest Jewish philosopher and jurist, um, wrote his wrote a lot of his work in his philosophical work in Arabic, and wrote also a code of Jewish law in Hebrew. So all of his Arabic works were translated into Hebrew, and primarily studied in Hebrew. So and there were, imagine in the ancient world, there's no printing, right? There are lots of printing. There's no printing in the 11th century. So everything is handwritten. So we have lots of handwritten books being passed around all over the place. And there were different versions of the Rambam. There were different versions of some of the texts of the Rambam. And and in one of the and his commentary on the Mishnah, he gives a list of things that one has to believe, of beliefs. And very interestingly, there was uh, a well-known Yemenite rabbi who collected many different versions in Yemen. They had lots of different versions of Maimonides' works, and he collected them and he made critical editions and all sorts of things. And one of the things he discovered is that there was a curious mistranslation, that when the Rambam would write that one should know God, it was translated as one should believe in God. So the actual obligation, so this is the best way of reading the Rambam, is we are obligated to know there is a prime being. We are obligated to know there's a prime being who brought all into existence into being, continually sustains its existence, must further know that this being to whom we refer to as Hashem, right, is the Lord of the universe and runs it with his limitless power. So the obligation is not to believe, but to know. So to know something, right? Believing something is something that you can do very, very easily, I think, right? I mean, we take a kid and we say, you know, there's a tooth fairy, right? This tooth fairy, and we're going to take for your tooth and we'll put it under the pillow, and the tooth fairy is going to tooth fairy is going to put a coin under your pillow, right? And take your tooth. Right? It's very easy for a child to believe that, but to know something requires an entirely different effort. I mean, I can believe all sorts of things about somebody, but to come to know them is an entirely different process and requires um, a bigger investment, a much bigger investment. So, so is the atheist the person who doesn't believe in God, or is the atheist the person who doesn't invest in knowing God, who doesn't invest in knowing God? And is it possible that there are a lot of people who are religious who are really atheists in the sense that they don't know God, right? They believe in God. They believe that there's a God and they believe that this is what God wants from them, but do they really know there's a God? Do they really know that God runs the world? Do they really know that God is all power, that God is all powerful? And that's, I think, you know, I think it's a difficult question because we're so tough. We're as religious people, we're so tough on people who don't believe, right? On people who don't believe. But the question is whether we're even fulfilling our obligation, right? If it's to believe, that's something that's inculcated into us as children or not, we're not even responsible for it. But knowing is something that we are responsible for. That's something that we have to do. So uh, I think that we have to kind of revise our, how we understand atheism, and we have to admit that there are many religious people who are functional, just like you could be a functional alcoholic. There are people who are functional atheists. They're functioning religiously, but when it comes to actually knowing God, they're also falling short. Um, so that's one point. The difference between believing and knowing. Second is, uh, I don't know whether I'm up to second or third or fourth. I shouldn't list things because I ramble. Um, I think uh, as I was thinking about it this week, one of the things I really enjoy about these conversations, by the way, is that they linger with me through the week, right? So the way it works is we've been having these conversations. They run through my head what we said before, what Dr. Zahir said before, and then I start thinking about the next week, and I start thinking about what we're going to talk about, and so it kind of percolates in my head throughout the week. And one of the things that percolated in my head was, okay, so if I really knew God, even if I really believed in God, says, would I do all the things that I do? Like, and when I say me, I mean anybody, right? Anybody. I don't know anybody who behaves 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for their entire life, as if as if they truly believe in God, as if they truly know that God is present to them at every single moment. So that means that all of us are are twinkling atheists, right? And in one moment, right, we're believers. In one moment, we're atheists. It doesn't mean that we're hypocrites. It doesn't mean that we're lying. We're not lying to anybody. We're not lying to ourselves. But that maintaining that state of knowledge, maintaining that state of being aware of God is a huge challenge. And so we point the finger at somebody else and we say, you know, you're not a believer. And then we have to look at ourselves and say, well, are we believers? Like, and when are we believers? And when are we not believers? Like, when is it that somehow or another um my 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 belief suddenly becomes not relevant because I want something else. And I think the last dilemma I have when it comes to atheism is I would like to believe, you know, there's a famous radio commentator, kind of public figure in America named Dennis Prager. And one of the arguments that he has made many, many times, and it's an argument that's not original to him, but is made by many religious people, is that there's no morality without religion. That if you don't believe in God, there's no absolute morality because you could always switch up. You can always switch up the morality. You can say, well, okay, you know, uh, killing is bad, robbing is bad because God says so. But if God doesn't say so, then it's only me that's saying so. It's my society that's saying so. And if my society decides that it's okay, right? If my society decides that stealing is fine, then it becomes fine, right? But if you have God, right? If you have God, then you have this absolute value, right? That's his point. So what you would expect to see, right? Looking at with that landscape, if that were true, what you would expect to see is a lot of really great, amazing, like believers, right? You would expect to see like amazing believers, and you would expect to see horrible atheists, right? You would expect that atheists would be the most horrible people in the world, right? They would just be terrible, right? They would never do anything good. They would never, and but that's not the reality. We all know it's not the reality, right? Every single person knows knows an atheist who is an amazing person, right? Who knows an atheist who is kind, who is empathetic, who who is who never hesitates to do a good thing for another person, who's a humanist, who puts human life at a very, very, very high value. And that for me is a very big challenge because I have a hard time squaring those things. I can't say I have a good answer for that. I just know, I just know that it's true, and that I often feel that there are atheists that have a passion for humanity that I don't see in their religious counterparts. And on the contrary, it it I often see who are atheists who are doing things for other people for the sake of that person, not for the sake of getting points, right? You know, so often, and it's something Dr. Zahir and have talked about before. I mean, so often it's like, you know, I'm going to do this because I'm getting a reward. I'm going to get a reward. I'm going to get, you know, I'm getting my brownie points. You know, it's getting racked up in the book. and or because God said to do this, so I'm going to do it, even though my heart may not be in it, and even though I may not be putting myself in it, which when it comes to doing things with other people is very important. People need your investment, they need you. They're not, even if you're just feeding people, right? If you're feeding people, it's not about the food, right? It's about the connection that you make with the person that's being fed. It's about sitting down at the table with them and breaking bread. It's not, those things are very important. And it's and the person who's putting people first, right? The ethical humanist, right? That became a bad word in America for a few years, right? They would religious people would shake their finger and go, "You're an ethical humanist," right? That was a really bad thing. The ethical humanist, can who calls himself an atheist can nevertheless have a higher level of respect for a human being than me, who believes that a human being is in the image of God and believes in God, right? So how is it possible? How does that work? And so I don't have a good answer for that. So I'm gonna leave that question hanging, and I'm gonna make Dr. Zahir answer it for me. That's that's so
So,
that's my plan.
well, you made some amazingly powerful points there, and I completely agree with you in everything you've said. And my experience as well is that I know some beautiful people who say they don't believe in God, but they behave in a way that actually, Jews, Christians, Muslims, people of the Abrahamic religion are invited to behave in that way, but they don't sometimes.
Mhm.
But you find, people who say they don't believe in God actually practicing, kindness, compassion, patience, forgiveness, gratitude, walking in those ways of peace, and not doing it for the sake of reward and punishment because they don't, that's not their aim, is not heaven or how, it's not
Right.
to get reward. It's actually just because they genuinely love people and they genuinely believe in these values and virtues of humanity, just because it's part of who they are and they're wanting to be true to themselves. And I think that is an amazing actually quality. And perhaps actually they are more of a believer than, one, we assume them to be, judge them to be, and two, than we are ourselves. Because and the other thing I would say is my understanding, I've come to understand that uh we are judged according to what we know. So the more we know something, the higher the responsibility. So a child, for example, if you ask a child, is there a God? They'll be like, well, what does God even mean? you
Right.
know. So if somebody's not aware of something, how can they believe in it? As in, like, if it's not been shown to them in a revealed manner, they may believe in it deep in their heart, but they don't know that they know, if you see what I mean. So I
Mhm.
believe that all of us believe, really, but we might not know that we know. And actually, sometimes our ego gets in the way. Um, and my personal understanding is whether someone's a believer or not is whether they how much they choose to follow their own understanding and according to their ego, instead of accepting that there is always a higher way and a higher understanding and surrendering to that truth. And then once that truth is revealed to that person, whether we choose to follow that path or to turn away from it. So like, and that can be unique for every person, and everybody's got their own path to truth, depending on, how they're brought up or whether they go to a Catholic school and, things like that. So the one question like, that's my understanding, but I'm open to learning more and reaching a higher understanding, God willing. My question is, how much do you think uh those who say that they believe in God are responsible for for atheism existing in the world? Because I know people who don't believe in, who they say they don't believe in God, and when I ask them why, they say, well, because, I refuse to believe in a God that causes that leads to so much evil in the world, because people do things, bad things, in the name of God, and they defile the name of God in that sense. So they refuse to believe in that God. And as you said, the Zeus example, I think that was, uh, it's important to understand what people mean by not believing in God and why they choose not to. And how much should we take responsibility as as those who practice a certain religion, um, in helping to inspire faith in others? What do you think?
Yeah, well, that is listen, I sometimes ask myself the same question, you know, I remember being in Jerusalem once. Um, and it was I Friday afternoon, and people are rushing before Shabbat, and people are rushing before Shabbat, and everybody gets grumpy a little bit before Shabbat. They get worried, they have to get ready. And I was looking around, I was thinking, so if I were not religious and I was watching this scene, what would I think? So I would think this is a bunch of worried, angry, anxious people. Like I think, and I would think, why would I want to join this club? Like, why would I want to join this? And I think, of course, I think that is a reasonable response, to the news, to what you see, what you see going on in the world. I completely understand why somebody would say, why would I want to be part of something like this that causes so much negativity in the world? And and so that means, I think, that means, and I take this responsibility very seriously, that we have to, that people, religious people, if the best thing you can do for the reputation of God is to be a decent person. That's the
Mhm.
best thing you can do for the reputation of God. Simple as that. Try to be a decent person. Work really hard on yourself to be a decent person. And um, you know, and be the best example that you can be. 'Cause people don't listen to what you say. People listen to who you are and what you do. That's, there are lots of people saying, especially nowadays, right? We go on TikTok, we go on Instagram, we go on Facebook, we see thousands of people saying thousands of things, whatever else. And the only thing that really matters in this world right now is how we behave and what we do. And and so, we have to be the best that we can. And actually, so I had an alternative title to this talk, and then I didn't send it to you, um, because I thought maybe we could use it for a later. But the question is is bad religion better than no religion? you
Mm,
know?
it's a really
And
good
I'm
question.
not sure it is. I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm not sure it is. I mean, at least no religion does less damage. And I think that we have to be very honest about that. I think we have to, face up to that. I have to face that squarely. And so when I look at the atheist, I have to consider, you know, uh, I would rather them be atheists than to be fanatical crazies and be hurting people,
Mm.
you know? I mean, and that's,
Yeah, that's a really good point. And also, you could ask as well, like, is it better to, let's say if somebody doesn't know that something is wrong and therefore they practice that wrong, you know, they do something wrong that we might perceive, others might perceive as wrong. but they don't really know that it's wrong, but at least they're being true to themselves. So they might even believe it's good. So that person compared to, for example, somebody who knows, yeah, so somebody who knows that something is wrong but does it anyway, or somebody that says that they believe when in their heart they don't actually believe. So is hypocrisy worse than disbelief?
Yeah. There's I forget where it is. It's in the code of Jewish law. There's this there's this great line where um I forget exactly what it was, but it was like something on Shabbat that was not like it was not exactly wrong to do, but it was not exactly right to do. And the but it's something that's very common that people do kind of unconsciously.
Mm.
And I remember the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law saying, if you see your family doing this on Shabbat, don't say anything. He says, and then he says, because if you say something, they're going to do it anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's going to be on purpose, right? Now it's going to be on purpose. And that's sort of a basic principle. I mean, if you know, if you know that a person is not prepared to hear something, and now you're going to you put them in the position of like,
Oh, I
you
see. Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so maybe sometimes it's better not to say, sometimes better not to say. Or, if you know that a person is really sincere, they want to do the right thing, then and you expect that it's going to be heard, then it's better to say. But yeah, it's true that, if I know better and I know better and then that's definitely worse, that's
Mm.
definitely worse. And my moments of flickering atheism, my moments
Yeah, that was a
where
good point that you made
you
about.
where somehow or another my God consciousness turns off, right? And that stops being the most important thing for me. That's also, that's also
There's a difference between willingly turning it off or forgetting. And I think human beings are prone to forgetting that they believe in God or they
that we are. Yes.
presence. But it's that state of constant return, isn't it, that's important when you forget to try to remember. So that state from my understanding from an Abrahamic perspective is to just trying to remember as much as we can the presence of our creator, not as something, just outside of us, but sort of just within us, and remembering who we really are, and remembering the ways of peace and trying to walk in them as much as possible, even going against our desires that might be for selfish reasons that we want to pursue, in every given moment as much as we can. But it's so easy to forget, especially with all the temptations and the delusion of this world. And my daughter made a really good comment, actually. I asked her today, I told her that we were going to be talking about this topic, and I asked her what her thoughts were. And she said, um, you can't just judge somebody, mum, just because if somebody says they don't believe in God, you have to, you should ask them, do you believe in the concepts of compassion and kindness and respect and all of these, virtues and values that are common within all of us
Mhm.
that we share. And actually, there are many atheists who say they don't believe in God, but they believe in these values, and
Yes.
they believe in good. This is what she said. She said, ask them, do you believe in good? Because good is like God. This is what she said. And actually, she made a really, good is God, God is good. So that's, I guess, where the word comes from. And it was a really powerful point because, you get humanists who say, well, we don't believe in a God as in a person or something, but we believe in those values. And in the Quran, it says, all the most beautiful names and attributes belong to God. So call upon him using those attributes. So you can call him most compassionate, most merciful, most forgiving, most, and try to emulate those ways of peace as much as possible. And like you said, that you believe that we're all made in the image of God, as in, I understand that to be sort of, we're all made in the image of those attributes, as in those attributes are actually part of who we really are in our nature. And it's
Mhm.
remembering who we really are and trying to sort of, and believing in that. But that's my understanding, but I don't know what you would say about that.
Well, yeah, well, my intuition, I mean, I guess my intuition,
And this is
um,
which I was like, I was like, wow.
yeah, no, I think yeah, I mean, my intuition is actually very much in that direction. My intuition is like they they clearly believe in some transcendent good, right?
Mm,
They clearly people who are like that, and I know a lot of them. I know a lot of them clearly believe in some transcendent good. It's not just a rational conclusion that this is something which is good. It is a deep belief and conviction
mm,
in the transcendent good of those values, right? And to me, that's that yeah, I'm with her. I mean, I think that I think she's onto something. I think again, like what are we calling, what are we calling God? And and all those qualities, those are godly qualities,
mm,
right? Those are godly qualities, and that the fact that people want to emulate them, the fact that people, want to relate to them, tells me that maybe in some sort of way that I don't quite understand, and you put it very nicely, they are relating to qualities of God. So I'm very hesitant to call people atheists. I'm very hesitant, you know, to say that they have no that you know that they have no God. They're not believers, because their behavior often belies that.
mm. Amazing, yeah. I I'm very hesitant as well. And I think the sincerity in our heart is really important. And you might have somebody who says that they believe in God, but behave in an arrogant manner and actually have more arrogance in their heart than somebody who says that they don't believe in God, but is actually very humble and loves people and practices compassion. And and how much, let's ask ourselves, how much harm do they cause in the world? Which person is more likely to cause harm?
Mm,
I mean, look at all the things happening in the world in the name, because of religion, because people think that their religion is better than someone else's, that their God is, better than someone else's God. And I think that's arrogance, isn't it? That's like
mhm.
thinking you're better than somebody else. And actually it causes us to fail to see the creator within every single person. And um and leads to things which the religions actually teach us not to do. And then that gives the name of, defiles the name of God, and then people don't want to believe, and which is a shame, because I personally think, there's so much blessing in believing in God, and knowing, in an open way and in a revealed way, feeling the presence of our creator, um and willingly sort of, you know going down those paths in a revealed way. um but I don't blame people for not, in this
No,
today's what's happening in the world. So many people don't want to believe in a God that results in, killing of people, killing and you
yeah,
know
no, it's difficult. No, it's difficult. I, you know, as as I as a person, who looks at news and things like that, I understand how people have become very disillusioned,
Mm.
and I can't fault people for their disillusionment. The best I can do is try to dispel it in the best way I can, and to be the best person I can be, and to share, a message which I think is, a message which is healthy. I think healthy religion, is the only antidote to bad religion is good religion, and so I try to do my best and hopefully teach good things
That's
and
the best thing,
be
and
good things. So
yeah, to practice what we preach, and always to um seek knowledge, all of us, and then educate actually about the true values and virtues that the religions, actually the major religions in the world, they will teach compassion and kindness. But the problem with what's happening is that you then get hate crimes against those who are just wanting to practice their religion in peace and actually do so much good because of their religion, because religion can be a huge blessing. And it's a shame that all of this then can then lead to hate crimes against um
yeah.
the
So
faith.
yes, you have hate crimes,
Mm.
you have this religion hating on that religion, this one doing this to this, and then of course then it looks like makes it look even worse, because then it's not only is religion a source of
Mm.
conflict, but it's
Yeah.
like this multiple edged sword.
Yes,
So
exactly. Because then
it's
when somebody calls themselves an atheist and then attacks those who believe say that they believe in God because of a certain religious label, then that makes atheism looks worse. Do you see what I mean? Then people
right.
of different religions then, maybe judge them more. And it's just
Yeah.
I think the best we can do is, like you said, is just, seek truth and try to be good examples to others and follow,
Okay,
try
so
to.
now we ask Dr. Zahir. Dr. Zahir, what do you think? Oh, he's not here, but he's going to tell us next time. So, Dr. Zahir, we laid down the gauntlet. It's up to you now. It's up to you now, and I'm sure he will do a wonderful job. And I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say on the topic.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing all this amazing wisdom, and God bless you
Sure.
um, for all your efforts to um, educate about the Jewish perspective.
Speaking of educating, don't forget to like and subscribe down below.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to say, or
That-
okay. Okay, thank you so much. God bless you. Shalom, everybody. Thanks for watching, and peace and blessings, everyone. Bye.